Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the massive golden doors of the Galactic Council chamber, her boots clicking against the polished floor that had been walked upon by thousands of alien diplomats over the centuries. She had practiced this moment in her mind 100 times, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of standing before the most powerful beings in the known universe. The chamber itself was enormous, stretching upward like a cathedral made of light and crystal, with holographic stars floating in the domed ceiling above. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sections, each one watching the small human woman who had dared to request an emergency session. Elena took her place at the central podium, a spot reserved for those who came to beg for help from the mighty council. She hated that word, beg, but that was exactly what she had been sent to do. And the lives of millions of human colonists depended on her success today. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. I come before you representing the United Earth government with an urgent request for military assistance. She activated the holographic display built into the podium, and images began floating in the air above her. Images of burning colonies, of destroyed ships, of bodies floating in the vacuum of space. For the past 18 months, Vraxian raiders have been attacking human settlements in the outer territories, Elena continued, keeping her voice professional and calm. They have destroyed 12 colonies and killed over 2 million of our citizens, including women and children who had no way to defend themselves. The images shifted to show the Vraxian war vessels, their hulls covered in the trophies they collected from their victims. The aliens were known throughout the galaxy as brutal pirates who enjoyed causing suffering. We have tried to defend ourselves, but our fleet is limited by the Treaty of Andromeda Station, Elena explained. We are asking the Council for assistance. Just a single patrol fleet stationed in our outer territories would be enough to deter these attacks and save countless innocent lives. She finished her presentation and stood waiting, hoping that the Council would show mercy, hoping that 60 years of faithful service to this alliance would count for something. The chamber was silent for a long moment, and Elena felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps they were considering her request. Perhaps they understood the desperate situation humanity faced. Then the Zefkari High Speaker rose from his elevated platform, his insectoid body towering nearly 3 meters tall, his ceremonial robes flowing around him like liquid silver. He was the most powerful being in the chamber, the leader of a species that had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. His mandibles clicked together in a pattern that Elena's translator recognized as amusement, and her heart sank as she realized what was coming. The humans ask us to protect them, the High Speaker said, his voice carrying throughout the chamber with perfect clarity. Again, they come before us with their hands out, begging for scraps from their betters. Laughter began to ripple through the assembly. Clicks and whistles and strange guttural sounds that all meant the same thing. Perhaps, the High Speaker continued, clearly enjoying himself, if their species spent less time breeding and more time evolving, they would not need to beg at our feet like the domesticated animals they so closely resemble. The laughter grew louder, and Elena felt her face flush with shame and anger. She had known that many species looked down on humanity, but she had never expected such open contempt. A Morvathi delegate, a serpentine creature with scales that shimmered in the light, raised itself up and added its voice to the mockery. Indeed, the humans are the galaxy's charity case. They contribute nothing of value and constantly demand protection from the consequences of their own weakness. More laughter. More agreement from around the chamber. A representative from the Illumin Collective, beings of pure energy contained in crystalline shells, spoke next. One must question whether humans even possess true sentience. Their technology is primitive, their lifespans are pathetically short, and their intellectual capabilities are clearly limited. Elena stood frozen at the podium, her earpiece translating every word, every insult, every joke made at humanity's expense. She wanted to scream at them, to tell them that humans had built everything they had from nothing, that they had crawled out of caves and reached the stars in just a few thousand years. But she said nothing, because she had been trained to say nothing, because Earth needed these allies, because the treaties that bound humanity were the only thing keeping them safe in a galaxy full of predators. A Dorthany counselor, a massive being that looked like a walking mountain of stone and moss, rumbled with what passed for laughter among its kind. I suggest we reclassify Earth from a developing civilization to a protected wildlife preserve. We could charge other species admission fees to observe the primitive humans in their natural habitat. The chamber erupted with the loudest laughter yet, and Elena felt something break inside her. Not her spirit, not her hope, but something else entirely. She felt the chains fall away for 60 years. Humanity had smiled and nodded and accepted whatever treatment the galaxy decided to give them. They had signed every treaty, accepted every restriction, paid every fee that was demanded of them. They had done everything right, everything they were supposed to do. And this was their reward: mockery and contempt from the very beings they had trusted to treat them fairly. Lena did not cry, did not shout, did not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Instead, she simply turned off her podium display, straightened her uniform, and began walking toward the exit. "Where are you going, little human?" The Zefkari high speaker called after her, his voice dripping with amusement. "We have not dismissed you yet." Elena stopped at the golden doors and turned to face the chamber one last time. Her voice was calm and cold when she spoke. "You have made your position clear, High Speaker. Humanity understands exactly where we stand with this council. We will not forget this day, and neither will you." She walked out without waiting for a response, the doors closing behind her with a sound like thunder 6 hours later. Her full report reached the United Earth government. It included not just her official summary, but also the complete recording of every insult, every laugh, every moment of humiliation that humanity's representative had been forced to endure 12 hours after that. The recording was leaked to every news network on Earth and every human colony in the outer territories. Billions of people watched their ambassadors stand silent while aliens called them animals, while the galaxy laughed at their suffering, while 2 million dead humans were dismissed as unimportant. The reaction was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. There were no riots, no chaos, no screaming mobs in the streets. Instead, there was something far more dangerous. There was silence, a cold, calculating silence that spread across human space like frost across a window. Parents watched the recording with their children and said nothing. Soldiers watched it in their barracks and said nothing. Scientists and engineers and politicians watched it and said nothing. But in that silence, a decision was being made. In that silence, 60 years of patience and submission were being weighed against a single hour of contempt. 24 hours after Elena Vasquez walked out of the Galactic Council chamber, the United Earth government called an emergency session. Every leader, every military commander, every person of importance gathered to discuss what would happen next, and when that meeting ended, humanity had made its choice. The galaxy had laughed at Earth for the last time. Secretary General Marcus Chun stood at the podium of the United Nations General Assembly, his face showing no emotion as he looked out at the gathered representatives of every nation on Earth. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the words that had been spoken in the Galactic Council chamber, translated into every human language. The assembly hall was completely silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, not even the rustle of clothing. Every person in that room had watched the recording, and every person in that room had felt the same cold anger that now gripped all of humanity. For 60 years, Chine began, his voice steady and clear. We have bent ourselves to the galaxy's expectations. We have followed every rule, signed every treaty, and accepted every limitation that was placed upon us. We did this because we believed that cooperation was the path forward, that if we proved ourselves to be good and faithful members of the galactic community, we would eventually be accepted as equals. He paused and let his gaze sweep across the assembly. We were wrong. The words hung in the air like a judgment. And Chung continued without waiting for a reaction. The recording you have all seen shows us exactly what the galaxy thinks of humanity. We are not partners to them. We are not even rivals. We are pets. We are charity cases. We are primitive animals who should be grateful for whatever scraps they choose to throw us. He turned and gestured to the screen behind him, which now showed a list of every treaty Earth had signed with alien species over the past 6 decades. The Treaty of Andromeda Station limits our military to 300 combat vessels. This was supposed to prevent us from being seen as a threat, but instead it has left us unable to protect our own citizens from raiders and pirates. Another document appeared on the screen. The Compact of Restricted Technologies forbids U.S. from developing artificial intelligence beyond basic automation. We were told this was for our own safety, but in truth, it was designed to keep us technologically inferior. More documents, more treaties, more chains that have been placed around humanity's neck. The Zethkari trade agreement forces us to sell our resources at prices set by alien markets. The Morvathi Non-Expansion Pact restricts which systems we are allowed to colonize. The Illumin Cultural Exchange Protocol gives alien observers access to our research facilities. Chun turned back to face the assembly, and now there was fire in his eyes. Every one of these treaties was presented to us as a gift, as an opportunity, as proof that we were being welcomed into the galactic community. But they were never gifts. They were leashes, designed to keep humanity contained and controlled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, holding it up for everyone to see. This morning, I met with the leaders of every nation on Earth, and we made a decision together. We made the same decision that billions of ordinary humans made when they watched that recording. He pressed the button on the device, effective immediately. The United Earth government is withdrawing from every treaty we have signed with any alien species. The Treaty of Andromeda Station is terminated. The Compact of Restricted Technologies is terminated. Every trade agreement, every pact, every protocol that has bound humanity for 60 years is now null and void. The assembly erupted in cheers, but Chun raised his hand for silence. This is not just a symbolic gesture. In the next few hours, a message will be broadcast to every species in known space, informing them that humanity is no longer a member of the Galactic Council and no longer bound by its rules. We are withdrawing our diplomats from alien capitals and closing our borders to non-human vessels. He took a deep breath before delivering the final blow. Furthermore, any alien ship that enters human space without explicit permission will be considered hostile and will be dealt with accordingly. The implications of that statement were clear to everyone in the room. Humanity was not just leaving the galactic community. Humanity was declaring its independence, and it was prepared to fight for that independence if necessary. As Chun finished his address, the broadcast was already racing across space at faster-than-light speeds. Within hours, it reached every alien capital, every council member world, every species that had spent decades looking down on the primitive humans. The reactions were predictable. The Zethkari High Speaker called an emergency session of the council, where he dismissed humanity's withdrawal as a tantrum from a child species that will come crawling back when they realize they cannot survive alone. The Morvathi economists predicted that Earth's economy would collapse within 10 years, without access to galactic trade routes. They calculated that humanity would face massive resource shortages and technological stagnation. The Illumin Collective ran their probability calculations and determined that without Council protection, Earth and all its colonies would fall to Vraxian raiders within 3 standard years. They considered the matter settled and moved on to more important concerns. Other species had more varied reactions. Some were worried, some were amused, some were completely indifferent. But none of them truly understood what had just happened. They thought humanity was throwing a tantrum, that this was an emotional response to wounded pride, that the humans would eventually calm down and return to their proper place beneath the superior species of the galaxy. They could not have been more wrong in the weeks following the withdrawal. Humanity moved with a speed and coordination that should have worried any observer paying attention. Military personnel who had been scattered across civilian positions suddenly reported for duty. Factories that had been producing consumer goods switched to manufacturing unknown equipment. Scientists who had been working on approved research projects disappeared into classified facilities. The galaxy noticed none of this because they were not looking. Why would they watch a species that was already defeated? Why would they pay attention to primitives who had just destroyed their own future? But on Earth and across human space, something extraordinary was happening. Secrets that had been kept for decades were finally being revealed. Projects that had existed only in the shadows were emerging into the light. Secretary General Chun held a private meeting with a small group of military and scientific leaders. People whose names did not appear in any public records. People who had spent their entire careers preparing for this exact moment. How long until we are ready? Chun asked Admiral Yuki Tanaka, a woman whose official rank was merely commander and whose official position was desk duty at a minor naval base. Smiled for the first time in years. We have been ready for 30 years, sir. We were just waiting for permission. Chun nodded slowly, understanding finally dawning on his face. He had known there were secret programs, but he had never imagined the true scale of what humanity had built in the darkness. "Show me," he said, and Admiral Tanaka did. "What?" Chun saw in the following hours changed everything he thought he knew about his own species. He saw ships that should not exist, weapons that violated every treaty humanity had ever signed, technologies that the Illumin Collective had declared impossible. He saw the true face of humanity, the face that had been hidden behind 60 years of smiles and compliance, and he understood why the galaxy should have been afraid. "When do we reveal ourselves?" Chun asked when the briefing was complete. "The Council will send someone to punish us for our disobedience." Tanaka replied, "They always do. They cannot allow a species to simply walk away. It would set a dangerous precedent. And when they come?" Tanaka's smile grew wider, and there was something almost predatory in her expression. "When they come, we will show them exactly what happens when you mock a species that learned to survive. Ice ages and mass extinctions and world wars. We will show them what happens when you push humanity too far." Chun stood in silence for a long moment, processing everything he had learned. 60 years, he finally said. "We spent 60 years pretending to be weak." "Not pretending," Tanaka corrected. "Preparing. There is a difference, sir. We were never weak. We were patient. And patience is a weapon that no alien species has ever truly understood. The galaxy had made its choice when it laughed at humanity. Now humanity would make its response, and the universe would never be the same." Deep beneath the frozen surface of Europa, in a cavern that had been carved out of the ice over decades of patient work, Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of a ship that should not exist. The U.E.'s Prometheus stretched for 12 kilometers from bow to stern, a massive vessel of war that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. The bridge itself was a cathedral of technology, with holographic displays floating in the air and crew members working at stations that glowed with soft blue light. Everything about the ship was designed for one purpose: And that purpose was the complete and total destruction of any enemy. Foolish enough to challenge humanity, Tanaka had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment. She had joined the secret program at 18, fresh out of training, and had spent 40 years climbing through ranks that did not officially exist. She had watched from the shadows as humanity smiled and bowed and accepted every insult the galaxy threw at them, and through all those years, she had been building. Admiral, her executive officer, reported, "All systems are showing green. The fleet is ready to emerge on your command." Tanaka nodded slowly, savoring the moment. Outside the Prometheus, hidden in the ice and rock of the Jovian moons, waited the rest of humanity's true military, not the 300 small patrol vessels that the treaty allowed, not the handful of defense platforms that the galaxy knew about, but something else entirely: 8,000 warships, ranging from nimble destroyers to massive carriers, each one equipped with weapons and technology that humanity had developed in secret over 6 decades. 12 Titan-class dreadnoughts like the Prometheus, each one capable of destroying an entire enemy fleet on its own. And most importantly, crews who had trained their whole lives for a war that everyone else thought was impossible. "Begin the emergence sequence," Tanaka ordered. "It is time for the galaxy to see what we really are across the solar system." In hiding places that had been prepared decades ago, the true face of human military power began to reveal itself. Ships rose from beneath the ice of Europa and Ganymede and Titan. They emerged from hollowed-out asteroids in the belt and from hidden stations in the Oort cloud. They appeared from behind the dark side of the moon and from deep beneath the oceans of Earth itself. For 60 years, humanity had been told that they were not allowed to build more than 300 combat vessels. For 60 years, they had smiled and nodded and agreed to this limitation. And for 60 years, they had been lying. The secret had been kept through a combination of careful planning, advanced stealth technology, and the simple fact that no one in the galaxy had bothered to look. Why would they? Humanity was weak and primitive. What threat could they possibly pose? Now the galaxy would learn the answer to that question. Admiral Tanaka watched as her fleet assembled in formation, ship after ship emerging from the darkness until the void of space was filled with the might of human engineering. She felt tears forming in her eyes, not from sadness but from pride. These ships had been built by workers who knew they might never see them used. They had been crewed by sailors who had trained in secret, unable to tell even their families what they did. They represented the combined effort of 3 generations of humans who had refused to accept that their species was inferior. "All vessels are in position," Admiral, her tactical officer, reported. "We are ready to transmit." Tanaka straightened her uniform and activated the recording device. The message she was about to send would be broadcast across all of human space and beyond, reaching every species that had ever doubted humanity's strength. "This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Defense Force," she began, her voice calm and steady. "I am speaking to all vessels and stations in known space. As of this moment, humanity is no longer bound by the treaties that have limited our military capabilities for the past 60 years. She gestured, and the holographic display behind her came to life, showing the full extent of the fleet that had gathered. "What you are seeing is not a simulation. These are real vessels, crewed by real soldiers, equipped with weapons that your scientists told you were impossible. We have spent 6 decades preparing for this moment while you laughed at us and called us primitives." Her voice hardened with each word. "To those who have attacked our colonies and murdered our citizens, know this. We are coming for you. There will be no negotiations, no treaties, no mercy. You have proven that you see us as animals, and animals do not negotiate. They hunt." She paused to let that sink in before continuing. "To those who have simply watched as others abused us, understand that your neutrality has been noted. We do not blame you for the actions of others. but neither will we forget that you did nothing to help us. We suggest you stay out of our way. Finally, her voice softened just slightly. To those few species who treated us with respect and dignity, even when it was not popular to do so, thank you. You have proven that not all of the galaxy shares the contempt of the Council. We remember our friends, and we will remember you. She ended the recording, and her communications officer sent it racing across the stars at faster-than-light speeds within hours. The message had reached every corner of known space. Alien governments scrambled to respond, some with fear and some with disbelief. The Zethkari High Speaker demanded to know how humanity had hidden such a fleet, while the Illumin Collective ran their calculations again and again, unable to understand how their predictions had been so wrong. But the message was not the only thing humanity sent that day along. With Admiral Tanaka's words came technical data, carefully selected pieces of information that revealed just a fraction of what human scientists had accomplished. They showed weapons that could penetrate any known shield technology. They showed engines that bent space in ways that aliens had thought impossible. They showed artificial intelligence systems that made the most advanced alien computers look like children's toys. The data was a warning, and every species that received it understood the message. Humanity had not just caught up to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity had surpassed them in the council chamber. Emergency sessions were called one after another as representatives demanded answers that no one could provide. How had the humans done this? How had they hidden it for so long? What else were they hiding? The Zethkari High Speaker, the same being who had mocked humanity just days before, stood before the assembled council and tried to maintain control of the situation. This changes nothing, he declared, his mandibles clicking nervously. The humans have violated every treaty they signed. They have built weapons that are forbidden under galactic law. They must be punished, and they must be brought back under control. There were murmurs of agreement from some quarters, but others were not so sure. The Vraxian raiders quietly began withdrawing from human space, deciding that there were easier targets elsewhere. Smaller species that had always feared council domination watched with interest, wondering if humanity's rebellion might open doors for them as well. But the High Speaker was determined to restore order. He could not allow humanity to simply walk away from the system that had kept the galaxy stable for millennia. If one species could leave, others might follow, and the entire structure of galactic civilization could collapse. We will send a diplomatic fleet to the Sol system, the High Speaker announced. We will remind the humans of their obligations and give them one chance to return to the treaty framework. If they refuse, we will use whatever force is necessary to bring them back. He believed that a show of strength would be enough to cow the primitive humans back into submission. He believed that their fleet, impressive as it seemed, could not possibly match the combined might of Council species that had been building warships for thousands of years. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. Admiral Tanaka received word of the approaching diplomatic fleet within minutes of the Council's decision. Human intelligence networks had penetrated deep into alien governments over the decades, and little happened in the galaxy without Earth knowing about it. She smiled as she read the report. 16 Zethkari cruisers and a command carrier, accompanied by observers from a dozen other species. They are sending children to fight a war, she remarked to her executive officer. They still do not understand. Shall we meet them, Admiral? Tanaka considered for a moment before nodding. Yes, but not with everything we have. Send a single task force. Let them see what one small part of our Navy can do. Perhaps then they will begin to comprehend. The orders went out, and humanity prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The age of human submission was over. The age of human power had begun. The Vraxian warpack dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the new Helsinki system. 30 vessels strong and hungry for blood. Their commander, a scarred veteran named Krethful, had been raiding human colonies for years and had grown fat on the spoils. He had heard about humanity's Declaration of Independence, heard about their supposed secret fleet, and he had laughed. The humans were bluffing, trying to scare away predators with loud noises and empty threats. He had killed enough humans to know that they were soft and weak. Easy prey for warriors like his people. Scan the system, Krethful ordered, settling into his command throne. Find me the colony and calculate attack vectors. His sensors officer worked for a moment before looking up with confusion. Commander, I am detecting a single vessel between us and the colony. Human design, but unlike anything in our databases. Krethful snorted with amusement. One ship. The fools have sent one ship to stop us. They are even more pathetic than I thought. He ordered his fleet forward, spreading into attack formation as they approached the lone human vessel. As they drew closer, his sensors were finally able to get a clear picture of what they were facing. The UES Nemesis was smaller than his flagship, but built like nothing he had ever seen. Its hull was covered with weapon emplacements that his computer could not identify, and it radiated power signatures that should have been impossible for a vessel of its size. Commander, his weapons officer said slowly, those energy readings do not make sense. A ship that size cannot have weapons that powerful. Clearly your equipment is malfunctioning. Krethful snapped. All ships, attack formation. We will destroy this human toy, and then we will burn their colony to the ground. The Vraxian fleet surged forward, weapons charging as they closed the distance. The Nemesis did not move. It simply sat there, waiting when the Vraxian ships reached optimal firing range. They opened up with everything they had. Particle beams and plasma torpedoes and kinetic rounds tore through space toward the lone human vessel. The weapons never reached their target. Nemesis activated its defensive systems, and every incoming attack was simply erased from existence. Interceptor beams moved faster than the eye could follow, destroying torpedoes milliseconds after they launched. Energy shields absorbed particle beams without even flickering. Kinetic rounds were caught by gravitational fields and redirected harmlessly into the void. Krethful stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His entire fleet was firing at maximum capacity, and they were doing absolutely nothing. Return fire, he said quietly. And the Nemesis obliged the human ship's weapons came online. And Krethful finally understood the readings that his officers had dismissed as equipment errors. Each gun mounted on that vessel was more powerful than anything the Vraxians possessed. More powerful than anything he had ever seen. The first shot took out 3 of his ships simultaneously, the beam cutting through their shields and hulls like they were made of paper. The second shot destroyed 4 more. The third and fourth came so fast that they seemed like a single continuous blasting less than 30 seconds. Half of his fleet was gone. Retreat, Krethful screamed. All thoughts of conquest forgotten. Full retreat. Now, the surviving Vraxian ships turned and ran, their engines straining as they tried to escape the monster they had awakened. The Nemesis could have destroyed them all, could have hunted them down one by one, but it did not instead. It let 2 ships. Krethful's vessel was one of the survivors. And as he fled toward the safety of Vraxian space, he understood why he had been spared. He was meant to carry a message back to his people, to tell them what he had seen, to warn them that the humans were no longer prey behind him. The Nemesis sat silent among the debris of 28 destroyed warships. A monument to the price of underestimating humanity. News of the battle spread across the galaxy within days, but many refused to believe it. One human ship destroying an entire Vraxian warpack. Impossible. The humans must have used some kind of trick, some deception that would not work twice. The Zefkari High Speaker was among the doubters. He remained convinced that a show of force would bring humanity back into line. and he pushed forward with his plan to send a diplomatic fleet to Earth's 16 Zethkari. Cruisers and a massive command carrier entered the Sol system 3 weeks after the Vraxian defeat, accompanied by observer vessels from 12 different Council species. They had come to deliver an ultimatum, to demand humanity's surrender, to restore the natural order of the Galaxy's Secretary General. Chen received their transmission with a cold smile. "You have entered sovereign human space without permission," he replied. His voice broadcast on every frequency. "You have 30 minutes to withdraw. There will be no second warning." The Zethkari commander, a decorated officer named Vexthel, who had won battles against a dozen different species, actually laughed at the message. He ordered his fleet to continue toward Earth, confident that the humans would not dare fire on a diplomatic mission. 29 minutes passed at the 30-minute mark exactly. Space around the Zethkari fleet seemed to tear itself apart. Human vessels appeared from nowhere, emerging from cloaking fields that the Council had banned centuries ago. They were smaller than the Zethkari cruisers, but moved with a speed and precision that seemed almost supernatural. Before Vexthel could even give an order, his tactical display lit up with dozens of targeting locks. The humans fired first weapons that the Zethkari had never encountered ripped through their shields like they did not exist. Particle lances that cut ships in half, gravitational pulses that crushed hulls into twisted metal, missiles that seemed to think for themselves, adjusting course to find weak points in enemy armor. Vexthel tried to organize a defense, tried to get his ships into formation, but the humans were too fast and too coordinated. They struck from multiple angles simultaneously, never giving the Zethkari a chance to respond effectively. 4 minutes into the battle, half of the Zethkari fleet was destroyed. Vexthel's flagship was crippled, its engines dead and its weapons offline. He could only watch as the rest of his ships were methodically eliminated. The observer vessels from other species tried to flee, their captains desperate to escape the massacre and report what they had seen. The humans let them go, just as they had let the Vraxian survivors go when the battle was over. Not a single Zethkari warship remained intact. The mighty diplomatic fleet had been reduced to scattered debris in less than 4 minutes. The humans had not lost a single vessel. Vexthel survived, pulled from his dying flagship by a human rescue team that treated him and his crew with medical care that was far superior to anything available in the Council. He was eventually returned to Zethkari space, carrying recordings of the battle and a message from Secretary General Chun. "We warned you," the message said. "You did not listen. Let this be your final lesson. Humanity is no longer asking for respect. Humanity is demanding it." The recordings spread across the galaxy like wildfire, and this time no one could dismiss them as tricks or exaggerations. The observer vessels confirmed everything, their crews describing weapons and technology that should not have existed. Species that had mocked humanity began to grow very nervous. The Morvathi stopped predicting human economic collapse and started calculating how long it would take for human ships to reach their home systems. The Illumin Collective admitted publicly that their probability models had been fundamentally flawed. Zethkari High Speaker, faced with the destruction of his fleet and the humiliation of his species, had no choice but to accept a new reality. Humanity was not a junior species to be guided and controlled. Humanity was a power to be respected and feared in the halls of the Galactic Council, where laughter had echoed just weeks before. There was now only silence and dread. The reckoning had come, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The old order that had stood for millennia was crumbling, and a new power had risen to take its place. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the same golden doors she had exited in shame half a year ago, but this time everything was different. She was not alone. And she was not coming to beg. Behind her walked a delegation of human diplomats and military officers, their uniforms crisp and their expressions calm. Admiral Tanaka was among them, her chest covered with medals that had been classified until recently. Secretary General Chun had sent humanity's best and brightest to deliver a message that the galaxy would never forget. The great chamber was silent as Elena took her place at the central podium, the same spot where she had stood while aliens laughed at her people. Now those same aliens watched her with fear in their eyes, their mockery replaced by desperate hope that humanity might show mercy. Much had changed in 6 months. The Braxian raiders had been hunted to near extinction. Human fleets had tracked down every warpack that had ever attacked human colonies and destroyed them without mercy. The Braxian homeworld itself was now blockaded by a human task force, its people forced to surrender or face complete annihilation. They had chosen surrender, and the species that had terrorized human colonies for years was now effectively under human control. The Zefkari had fared little better. After the destruction of their diplomatic fleet, their government had collapsed into chaos. Lesser species that they had dominated for centuries saw their weakness and rose up in rebellion. Human ships provided quiet support to these rebels, not out of kindness, but because a fractured Zefkari empire served human interests. The great insectoid civilization that had ruled the Council for 10,000 years was now a shadow of its former self. Its influence shattered and its pride ground into dust. Other species had scrambled to adapt to the new reality. Diplomats flooded toward human space, carrying gifts and proposals for friendship. Trade delegations begged for access to human markets. Military leaders quietly sought alliances with the new power, hoping to gain protection from the chaos that was spreading across the galaxy. Elena let the silence stretch out for a long moment before she began to speak. 6 months ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for help, she said, her voice echoing through the vast space. I asked for protection from my people, for assistance against those who were murdering our citizens. And you laughed at me. She let her gaze move across the assembled representatives, meeting eyes that quickly looked away. You called us primitives. You called us charity cases. You suggested we be reclassified as a wildlife preserve for your amusement. You made it clear that humanity was beneath your contempt. Her voice hardened with each word. We heard your message, and we responded. We showed you what we really are. We showed you what happens when you push a species that survived ice ages and mass extinctions and global wars. We showed you why you should have been afraid. She paused to let that sink in before continuing in a slightly softer tone. But we did not come here today to threaten you or to demand revenge. We are not like you. We do not take pleasure in the suffering of others, even others who have wronged us. The representative stirred slightly, confused by this unexpected statement. We came here to offer you a choice, Elena explained. The old order is dead. The system that kept you comfortable while you looked down on younger species has collapsed. You can try to rebuild it, to restore the hierarchy that allowed you to mock and abuse those weaker than yourselves. Her smile was cold and sharp, but we will not let you. Any attempt to return to the old ways will be met with the full force of human military power. We have proven that we can destroy your fleets. We can prove it again if necessary. She raised her hand before any of the representatives could respond. Or you can accept that things have changed and work with us to build something better. A new order based not on dominance and contempt, but on mutual respect and cooperation. A galaxy where species are judged not by how old they are, or how powerful they once were, but by their actions and their character. Secretary General Chun stepped forward to stand beside Elena. Humanity is offering membership in a new alliance, he announced. An alliance of equals, where every species has a voice, and every species is treated with dignity. We will share our technology and our knowledge with those who join us. We will protect those who need protection. We will build a future that is better than the past. The Morvathi delegate was the first to speak, his serpentine body coiling nervously. And if we refuse to join this alliance of yours? Chun's expression did not change. Then you will be left alone. We will not attack you. We will not conquer you. We will simply ignore you. You will watch as your neighbors grow stronger and more prosperous while you cling to the remnants of an empire that no longer exists. It was not a threat, but it was clear that isolation would mean slow decline and eventual irrelevance. Species that refused to adapt would be left behind while the galaxy moved on without them. One by one, the representatives began to signal their acceptance. The Morvathi, the Illumin Collective, even the broken remnants of the Zethkari leadership. They had no real choice, and everyone in the chamber knew it when the voting was complete. The Galactic Council had been dissolved by unanimous decision, replaced by the Terran Alliance. Humanity had been granted permanent leadership of the new organization, a position that came with enormous responsibility, but also enormous power. Elena watched as the final votes were recorded, feeling a strange mix of triumph and sorrow. Humanity had won, but the victory had come at a terrible cost. 2 million dead colonists, decades of humiliation, and a war that had destroyed entire civilizations. She thought about what Admiral Tanaka had told her before this meeting, about why humanity had spent 60 years pretending to be weak instead of simply revealing their strength. We could have shown them the truth at any time, Tanaka had said. We could have emerged from hiding decades ago and demanded respect. But we waited because we wanted to be sure, because we wanted to give them every chance to treat us fairly without being forced. And when they failed that test? Elena had asked. Tanaka's expression had been sad but resolute. When they failed, they proved that they could not be trusted to lead. They proved that power in their hands would always be used to abuse and exploit weaker species. They gave us no choice but to take that power away from them. Elena understood now that humanity's patience had been a test that the galaxy had failed spectacularly. The laughter in this chamber, 6 months ago, had sealed the fate of the old order more surely than any military victory. She stepped back to the podium one final time to deliver her closing remarks. You asked once why humanity spent so much time breeding, she said, echoing the insult that had started everything. Let me give you the real answer. She looked out at the gathered representatives of dozens of species, beings who had once considered themselves the masters of the galaxy. We breed because every human child is a new chance at greatness. We breed because our short lives force us to make every moment count. We breed because we know that our strength is not in any single individual, but in the billions of us working together toward a common goal. Her voice rose with passion. You have lived for thousands of years and accomplished nothing but stagnation. We have existed for a fraction of that time and have already surpassed you. That is the difference between us. That is why you should never have mocked us. She turned and began walking toward the exit, her delegation falling into step behind her. Humanity will lead this alliance with wisdom and fairness, she said without looking back. We will be better rulers than you ever were. Not because we are superior, but because we remember what it felt like to be looked down upon. The golden doors closed behind her, and a new era began. The galaxy had laughed at Earth, and humanity had responded by changing everything. They had turned mockery into motivation and contempt into fuel for transformation. They had proven that the measure of a species is not how long it has existed, but how it rises to meet challenges in the end. The aliens had been right about one thing. Humanity was different from every other species in the galaxy. They had just been wrong about what that difference meant, and as human ships spread across the stars, bringing order and prosperity to a galaxy that desperately needed both. A simple truth became clear to everyone who witnessed the new age. Some creatures smile not because they are happy, but because they have teeth, and humanity had the sharpest teeth of all.